The cub dropped a broken circuit shard at Nora's boots like an offering. Not a toy. Not trash. A jagged piece of station logic board, still warm from a power bus, edges scorched. The tiger cub, 4 months old, backed up 2 steps, tail flicking, eyes huge, and made a tiny sound that wasn't a growl. It was a request. Behind it, 2 more striped cubs emerged from the nursery shadow and placed their own gifts on the deck. A bent bolt, a braided wire, a cracked sensor lens. They sat, perfectly still, as if waiting for a verdict. Nora didn't call security. She didn't reach for a sedative. She crouched slowly and let her hands stay open. "Okay," she whispered. "Show me." The cub's ears twitched in relief. One bumped the shard toward her with its nose. Another poured the wire into a straight line. The third pressed the lens against the bolt as if trying to remember how it fit. Nora's stomach tightened. These weren't random scraps. These were components. A pattern. She scooped the pieces into a cloth pouch and carried them to her workstation. The cubs followed in 0G bounds, paws paddling through the air like they owned the corridor. At 3:17 station time, the cubs returned. More parts. At 3:31, more. Always the same categories: conductor, fastener, optic, chip. Never food. Never bedding. Never shiny trinkets. By dawn, Nora's work table looked like the beginning of a machine. "Where are you getting these?" she asked, keeping her tone soft. The smallest cub, Stripe, blinked slowly, then looked past her shoulder at the sealed maintenance hatch near the nursery wall. The hatch had been locked for months, marked decommissioned, with a red strip of tape no one bothered to remove. Nora's pulse slowed, the way it did when her instincts agreed with the cub's instincts. "Not possible," murmured a tech who'd wandered in for coffee. "That hatch is dead. No access." Stripe lifted a paw and tapped the deck twice. Tap. Tap. A rhythm. Then all 3 cubs stared at Nora like they were waiting for her to keep up. Nora stood. "Fine. We do it properly." She pinged security. "I need a supervised access check on the decommissioned hatch outside Nursery B." The reply came fast and annoyed. "Absolutely not. Predator juveniles have been stealing hardware. Lock them down." "They're not stealing," Nora said. "They're building." Silence. Then a sharp voice. "Commander TVAS. Dr. Nora, those animals are a liability. Anything they drag out could be hazardous." Nora looked at the cubs. Stripe pressed its forehead to her knee, gentle, desperate. "They're warning us," Nora said. "Or they're preparing. Either way, we listen." Tevis exhaled hard. "You have 10 minutes. 1 team. Stun nets only. If a cub lunges, I end this." Nora didn't argue. She knew what would happen if she did. The hatch corridor smelled like cold metal and old lubricant. 2 security officers floated beside the panel, net launchers clipped to their harnesses. Tevis watched from the far end, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. The cubs approached the hatch and sat in a line. Not begging. Waiting. Nora ran her scanner. No power. No active systems. But the hatch seam vibrated faintly, so faint her wrist pad ignored it. The cub's ears flicked on every pulse. Nora placed her palm to the seam. Thump, thump, thump. Not sound. Pressure. A sub-frequency tremor. "Open it," she said. One officer hesitated. It's sealed for a reason." Nora kept her eyes on Stripe. "So is a coffin." The officer swallowed and spun the manual wheel. The hatch side open, releasing air that tasted like storms. Beyond was an older ring, maintenance tunnels, stripped walls, dead lights. And something else, thin, blue, flickering, like a heartbeat trapped in a wire. The cubs surged forward, not in panic but in purpose. Hold! TVS barked. Nora moved with them. No chasing. No shouting. The tunnels narrowed. Debris drifted in slow orbits. Somewhere ahead, a faint light blinked, a service drone, wedged behind a brace, its chassis cracked, its status beacon stuttering. Stripe reached it first and nudged a cable loose. The beacon brightened. Then the drone spoke, voice warped by age. Emergency nursery node. Active. Request. Assembly. Nora's blood went cold. Nursery node. A security officer scoffed. Old junk. It's been dead since the first retrofit. The drone's light flashed faster. Hull stress. Incoming. Node required. Nora's pad finally recognized legacy code and threw a red countdown across her wrist. Hull stress cascade. 5 minutes and 9 seconds. Tivis's face tightened. That's impossible. Stripe yowled, sharp, urgent, and dropped another bolt at Nora's feet like, not impossible. Late. Nora turned to the drone. What are you missing? The drone projected a simple schematic, a small assembly, a compact brace signal repeater. 4 key pieces. Conductor. Fastener. Optic. Chip. The exact parts the Cubs had been bringing. Nora stared at the Cubs. You've been collecting a repair kit. Stripe blinked once, slow and solemn. Tivis's voice sharpened. We evacuate. Nora shook her head. We don't have time. We stabilize, then evacuate. Doctor, you are not an engineer. Nora's mouth tightened. I'm a human. We fix what we can reach. The countdown ticked. 4 minutes and 31 seconds. Nora dumped the pouch onto the deck. The Cubs immediately began sorting, pushing parts into neat clusters with their paws. One Cub held a wire against the schematic like it was comparing memories. Another rolled bolts into a line. Stripe guarded the chip fragments with its body, growling softly when an officer drifted too close. Protocol says step back, the officer muttered. Nora met his eyes. Protocol didn't hear the alarm. She snapped on a headlamp and began assembling. Hands steady. Breath steady. The Cubs moved around her like trained assistants. No, like partners, offering parts exactly when she needed them. When her fingers slipped in 0G, Stripe hooked the wire with a claw and pulled it into place. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. The tunnel lights flickered. A groan traveled through the brace above them like a giant waking up angry. TVAS's comms crackled. Command says hull stress readings are climbing in Ring 6. Nora pressed the optic lens into the bracket and locked it with a bolt. Then we finish. 2 minutes and 6 seconds. A sudden jolt threw debris into motion. A tool cart drifted toward Nora's face. One Cub launched, shoulder checked it aside, and the cart bounced harmlessly into a wall. TVS stared. They're controlling the environment. Nora didn't look up. They're trying to keep me alive. 1 minute and 11 seconds. The repeater clicked together with a soft, satisfying snap. Nora connected the conductor. Stripe yowled and slapped the drone's reset plate with its paw. The drone's beacon flared bright white. A silent pulse rolled through the tunnel, felt more than heard. The countdown froze. Hull stress cascade. Stabilizing. Nora sagged, forehead against the cold brace. She forced herself to breathe slowly, so the Cubs would copy her calm. They did. All 3 pressed against her side, trembling with leftover fear, but staying. TVS exhaled, something like disbelief and respect tangled together. You trusted them. Nora stroked Stripe's ear. They trusted me first. Back in the nursery, hours later, the Cubs finally slept, curled together in a soft mesh cradle Nora built from restraint straps and thermal padding. A floating nest, warm and snug, holding them close so silence couldn't hurt them again. Tevis stood in the doorway, posture less sharp. "New station order," she said. "Predator instinct alerts are to be logged as early warnings. No stun arcs near the nursery. Ever." Nora's eyes stayed on the cub's slow breathing. "Good." Stripe stirred, blinked up at her, then pushed a tiny paw through the mesh and placed it on Nora's knuckle. "Not a demand. A promise." Nora smiled, voice barely above the hum of life support. "You built something, Stripe. You built safety." Outside the window, the station lights held steady, and for the first time, the silence felt like rest. The station chose that moment to prove the cubs right. A low tremor rolled through the deck plates. Not enough to trip an alarm, but enough to make vents click. The cubs lifted their heads at once and stared at the ceiling like it had spoken. TVS's comms chirped. "Brace node C-14 just spiked. Engineering is 3 minutes out." 3 minutes is forever," Nora said. A junior officer drifted closer, net launcher raised. "Permission to restrain the juveniles. They're interfering." Stripe planted itself between Nora's hands and the part pile, tiny teeth bared, more warning than threat. Nora's voice stayed calm. "They are the reason we found this. Protocol is a checklist," Nora cut in. "Instinct is a signal." The officer reached for the chip fragments. Stripe reacted fast. It slapped a loose tool into motion. The tool spun, clipped the officer's wrist, and knocked his net launcher into a slow drift down the tunnel. No injury. No bite. Just a perfect disarm. Nora pointed. "Retrieve it. Then stand back." Nora's wrist display flashed a new line. "Secondary fail. Oxygen isolation. 2 minutes and 40 seconds. If the brace snaps, this section seals," Nora said. Tevis swore softly. "Command, route evac paths around the maintenance ring." Nora shoved the finished repeater into the drone socket. "Come on, old friend. Talk to the station." The drone's lights pulsed. "Link established. Sending. Brace command." Fans whined. Pressure shifted. Bulkheads locked into safer positions with heavy, distant clunks. Stripe's ears eased. The other cubs stopped trembling. For the first time, Nora understood what they'd been building. Not a weapon, not a toy. A voice. A way to make the station listen before it broke. Command finally messaged. Stress declining. Ring 6 stabilized. The countdown vanished. Relief hit like gravity returning. Safe at last, the cubs crawled into Nora's lap in a drifting pile and began to purr, steady warmth against her ribs, as if they were repairing her too. Tevis cleared her throat. "What do you call that one?" Nora looked down at the smallest cub. "Stripe," she said, "until it chooses better." Stripe yawned and pressed its forehead to her chin. Later, the council logged new policy: predator instinct alerts as early warnings, and no stun arcs near the nursery. That night, Nora rebuilt the mesh cradle into a proper floating nest with soft anchors and a warm pad that mimicked a heartbeat. The cubs climbed in, curled together, and fell asleep in minutes. No screaming at silence. Just breathing. Just home. In the nursery, the other crew finally saw what Nora had seen from the start. The cubs didn't steal parts for fun. They collected only what the schematic needed, and they never touched anything that smelled of danger. Batteries, pressurized canisters, sharp blades. They had rules. They had restraint. The next morning, Nora laid 4 harmless pieces on the floor and watched the cubs sort them by instinct alone. Stripe nudged the conductor toward the optic without thinking, then paused and looked up, as if checking Nora's face for approval. Nora gave one slow nod. Stripe's tail flicked once. Proud, quiet. TVAS came by with a replacement net launcher and an awkward expression. I filed the incident report, she said. I wrote that the juveniles used non-lethal displacement to prevent interference. Nora arched an eyebrow. You wrote they saved your officer's wrist. TVAS's mouth twitched. That too. Before she left, TVS stopped at the nest. The cubs slept in a tight knot of stripes, paws tucked, whiskers relaxed. You were right, she admitted. Nora didn't gloat. She just watched them breathe. They were, she corrected. And now the whole station knew it. Subscribe and like for more HFY Sci-Fi, and comment your favorite moment, the first gift, the silent countdown, or Stripe's promise.